Welcome to the podcast Built to Be a Legend. Today, I'm extremely excited to have Mark Herrera. Mark is the president and chief security strategist for Global Awareness Professionals, LLC. Mark is recognized as one of the top 25 most influential leaders in the security industry and a globally recognized security expert. Mark is a retired SWAT officer and international trainer dedicated to advancing safety, security, and resilience worldwide. Of his many highlights, I'll just touch on a few. He's conducted over 500 live security trainings for leaders across stadiums, arenas, theaters, convention centers, fairs, festivals, and faith-based organizations worldwide. He's delivered over 700 news interviews as a trusted spokesperson during crisis events, and he served as the chair of the Department of Homeland Security Public Assembly Facilities Subsector Council, and many others. So with that, welcome, Mark. I mean, again, in today's day and age, security, especially at these large events and everyday security is front and foremost on all our minds. And it takes a special person to kind of lead that. Law enforcement in general, there's so many attributes to law enforcement, right? It's that service, it's that sacrifice. My father was in law enforcement for many years, and I've always had an affinity for that. And honestly, I'm honored to have the Mark here talking with us. And yeah, so we're blessed to have him. So welcome, Mark. And before we really get into detail, maybe just share with us your journey in the public security industry and maybe some interesting experiences you've had and some of the notable highlights, events you've had, etc.
Absolutely, Tom. First of all, I just want to say thank you. I'm truly honored to be part of this conversation with you. Your book, as it's outlined, and the message behind it really speaks to me, and I can't wait to read your publication. So, first of all, I'm honored. Thank you for considering me to be a part of this. Interesting. You talk about the three things that we were going to discuss, and I'll just say that. I grew up in New Mexico, raised by my grandparents, right? There's a foundation. There's a reason why we do the things that we do today and how we have developed along the way. And for me, the developmental phase was at its basic roots. And the basic roots were raised in New Mexico by my grandparents, two of the most faithful and hardworking people I've ever known. We didn't have much, but we had love. We have that belief, that sense, as growing up, that sense of what actually matters in the world today, right? I've worked all aspects, right? So it starts out with, well, what's your background like? Well, so I've worked in all aspects of different types of jobs, from the cotton fields in New Mexico to working in restaurants to doing all the frontline work that no one really wants to do, right? So, but I took everyone, I delivered newspapers, Tom, but I took every one of those jobs serious because that's where the responsibility came from, right? Taking that responsibility that builds the humility and the character and everything that we do. That was important for me. So my grandfather and my grandmother used to always tell me, and she would tell me in Spanish, she would say, if you prepare your heart, how does she say it? Before your hands, God will handle the rest. And she would always say that in Spanish. And it always stuck. That always stuck to me. So at the time, I didn't fully understand it. But I know now that was the foundation of everything that came later.
Absolutely. Yes, she built the
So
foundation for you. Excellent.
right off the bat, Tom, that was the motivation right there. So those early years taught me that preparation it wasn't just about opportunity for me. It wasn't just about opportunity. It's about preparing for what you and I have talked about, and that is adversity, emotionally and mentally. That's what we need to prepare for. It's inevitable because it's going to happen. So it's like you take on those roles. And for me, taking on the roles to delivering what I do today is preparing myself for the adversity and helping other teams prepare for that adversity, not just the opportunity. The opportunities come when you properly prepare. So God was kind of training me through the long days, the hard work, and that quiet perseverance for the storms that were coming. And did they come? Yes, they did. And I called it a gift. So when I entered law enforcement, this is where it all began, Tom. So I learned that service wasn't about just wearing that badge. It was about carrying a burden. That's what it was about. It meant standing between fear and faith, between danger and safety, and choosing to act when others froze.
Yes.
My job was to act when people froze. I couldn't freeze. Freezing in the world today, when I train teams, is just not an option. Having a plan is. So throughout my career, I worked every aspect of the job, from patrol to investigations to training. Moved to Dallas to train all these armed pilots, right, to prevent another 9/11. But my reward system along the way was never about the titles or promotions. It was about the moments that reminded me why I was called to serve, beginning at its foundational level. Standing in the middle of gunfights, which I've done several times to protect others, performing CPR in a bank parking lot to save a stranger's life, gave me the Life Safety Award. The award meant nothing to me. What meant the world to me was the fact that a human life was saved as a result of the foundation that was built upon me. Calling to serve. So doing all these, or even mentoring along the way, mentoring young, misguided kids and watching them grow into leaders was a reward for me. And I always use my son as that example. A single dad raising my son to become one of the greatest leaders. I'm like, wow, that's the legacy. That's what you want. But I want to do the same thing, Tom, with all the teams that I train to make them resilient in three things: security, guest services, and operation. So the real service that you do it's not loud, it's steady. It's a heartbeat of someone who refuses to let darkness in. I wanted to be that light, that light that kind of cleared the path for people to survive some really potential hostile or bad situations, right? That was the key. And to me, that was leadership. So
It's it's everything. I mean, you're hitting on something that it's a concept that I've talked a lot about and others have as well, is that accepting maximum responsibility. And not many people do. So you have an opportunity. It's easy to walk away from, again, a stranger in a bank parking lot that needs life-saving care, or to run during a gunfight when you're supposed to be securing your community. Mentoring kids that need it, maybe going astray. It's easy to, well, they're not my kids, let them go. But it sounds like what you're doing is, again, foundational. You're accepting maximum responsibility. These people I've encountered in my life, I'm accepting maximum responsibility. How do I better my community and again, the people I encountered? So you embody that, and that's a blessing that you've given to your community, and again, people that you've crossed paths with. So
oh, thank you, Tom. And I always talk about the importance of service because that's one of the chapters in your book, which is
yeah,
that's I love it, because service doesn't come without sacrifice.
for
There's going to
sure.
be sacrifice behind it. And when being involved in two major shootings early in my career, life and death moments that required instant decision making, which left a lifetime of reflection, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
Yeah.
at a young age, I had to reconcile courage, faith, and consequence all at once. Like it was all bundled up at once. Sacrifice isn't always about dying for others. Sometimes it's about living for others, right? And carrying that weight that comes with that choice that we make. I
Yeah,
think that's the best
definitely.
way to put that. So sometimes sacrifices are silent. They're found in the long hours, right? The long hours,
That's
the
it.
missed family moments, which I missed many, right? They come in the emotional weight that just never goes away. You just have to figure out how to channel it. Um, I think that's the key. And I think that's leadership. And I think, in my opinion, that's basically, to your point, and your publication, that's faith in motion. It
Yeah,
all really ties in. Um, I have a verse, Tom, that I like to share that was the guiding principle of everything that I did. And feel free to use it, Tom. But
sure, sure.
there's one verse that has been my compass. And I had a shirt that had it on there. And it said, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the sons of God." I live by that.
Love it. Love it. One of the key
Live
beatitudes.
by- Tom, that is the verse that has guided every decision I have made. As a protector, as a father, and as a leader, I live by that verse. I was a single dad for many years, determined to raise a son to be a man of faith and humility, who is way better than I am. And today, he's a respected man as a deputy chief for his department on the fire side, a devoted husband, and just an incredible father to my own two children. That's my greatest legacy. So
Awesome.
now I take that legacy, Tom, and I want to build upon all of the young professionals, those that need the mentoring and the training from a global perspective. And that is my focus.
That is amazing. I love that verse. You know, we talk about peacemakers, you know, and I think so often there's this misconception around what peace really is. And, you know, peace doesn't always mean the absence of conflict. Matter of fact, it often doesn't. I mean, Jesus says, "I'll give you my peace. My peace I give to you." His peace wasn't necessarily an absence of conflict, but it was the peace of conscious, knowing that you're doing the right things for the right reasons. And I think you're hitting the nail on your head, right? I mean, again, life's not easy, but yet you bring that piece of doing the right things for the right reasons, and you've embodied that. You learned it from your grandma, you pass it on to your son, um, who's now the way he is because of you. So, and you do it for your community. So it's an amazing thing. What does life look like for you now? Like, what does global awareness do like on a daily basis? What is your um, focus there?
My focus right now with global awareness is to basically branch out and dive deep on the preparation side of what's challenging the world that we live in today. Building those unstoppable teams, bridging those generational gaps, building teams to forecast the encounters that are going to challenge them along the way, and to avoid that decision-making disruption I call the OODA loop. It's the disruption of the decision-making process. How do you prevent that from happening? And I always talk about you have to close the gap. You have to build the teams to understand what's challenging them from a security and guest service perspective, operationally, what's challenging them? How do you forecast what could potentially happen? And how do you close that gap through preparation? Because I always say, uh, preparation builds strength. The service is what gives it the purpose, and the sacrifice that we make doing it is what gives it the meaning at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
That's how I look at it. And that's how I tied in your three chapters. When you talk about preparation, you talk about service, you talk about sacrifices. I, I just thought about it and I thought, that's how I tie it all in. Tom's just able to identify it and plug it into his publication, which is going to be an amazing publication. I personally can't wait to read and give a copy to my son, Tom, because you're hitting on all the key concepts from a spiritual perspective of what has been the driving force of what I deliver today. To see teams accept the challenges the world is going to deliver, because the world can be a very ugly place.
Absolutely.
And teams are going to be, the inevitable is they're going to be challenged. And if I can't equip them with the tools to mitigate the risk that's going to plague their facilities and their environments and their organizations, not only from a professional perspective, but a personal perspective, then they end up behind the eight ball. And I don't want that. So the key is taking global awareness professionals in GAP and building these elite, unstoppable teams to include bridging those gaps that we talked about, because leadership is going to be critical and key in everything we do to make those components very resilient.
Absolutely. And who are some of your clients? You talked about teams. You have professional sports teams or something that are part of your clients? Yeah, that's
Yeah, Tom. I've had a 517 live training sessions. It's the most that one individual I've been told has ever
Yeah, I
done
can imagine it's a lot.
globally. And I never looked at the number until I looked at my spreadsheet, and I'm like, I cannot believe that I've done so many. And Boston, the Wang Theater is an example. They recognize my 500th, and they bring me in 3, 4 times to do speaking engagements, to do training for all of their teams in Boston. You guys never ever get tired of me? They go, absolutely not. We hear you talk all day long. So performing arts, convention centers, theaters, stadiums, arenas, amphitheaters, fairgrounds, conferences from all the different associations where I go in there and I do keynote addresses and speaking engagements for them, tabletop exercises, the sports leagues, the New York Yankees, all of Major League Baseball, Philadelphia Phillies. They're staying on top of their training. Bring me in every single year to train, 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 train. The New York Yankees, uh, NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, all the sports leagues. I'll train their game day staff. The Dallas Cowboys is actually where I started my training their teams. I
Wow.
trained all of their teams on several aspects that were plaguing the world today, Tom. And that was number one, having the right leadership in place. Um, I active threat, active shooter preparedness, de-escalation strategies and techniques,
Mm.
the predictive behavioral profiling, which is simply understanding behavioral patterns that are not conducive to an environment and training teams how to interject, diffuse, remove, and not trigger a bad situation. And empowering them to do that, right? And getting them fully vested and engaged is key and it's critical. And that goes alongside bridging all of those generational gaps. And of course, all the crowd management training
Oh,
that
yeah.
I've done globally. So there you have it, Tom.
It's critical. What's very interesting about your line of work. It's often in the background, right? People don't see that. They come to the games or they come to an arena or come to a play or a theater or a fair, and they don't think about all the preparation and discipline that went into that event being successful. And it's not just in it's in every area of our life. It is the preparation and the discipline that's behind the scenes that people never think about. They just see the outcome. Oh, wow, that person's so successful, or that event was so successful. Nobody knows or wants to know how hard it was to make that event successful. And that's the preparation and discipline. And I tie it a little bit into the Noah story in the Bible, often misconstrued story, but really the discipline and the preparation that Noah did in answering his call. People thought he was crazy, but it was that preparedness and that discipline that allowed him to withstand the floods of life, right? And he wasn't just responsible for Noah. He was responsible for his family that he brought on with him and for the creatures. I think it's critically important and it's missed. It's again, we're talking about that maximum responsibility. He took on the responsibility of all creatures and sheltering them from the storm, but it was only through discipline and preparation that becomes successful. And it's not just in our professional life, it's in our personal life. Like I'm guessing, Mark, and I don't know, but your personal life, I'm sure you carry that same preparedness and discipline into many areas of your life.
You outlined that rather well. I love the Noah story because that's true. It was he was the protector. He took himself out of the equation to protect everything,
Yes.
right? Making those sacrifices is key. It's critical. So yeah, taking all of that is what has is what how you yeah, from a personal perspective. When you look at from a personal, yes, Tom, I everything that I train and everything that I teach, I make sure that when it began from its early onset, from the foundation that actually built and gave me the key levels of competency to do the things that I do without hesitation to protect other people, I carry that in my personal life as well. So it doesn't matter where I'm at, I will take the time to help any and everyone to assure that they don't have. I have an interesting, I always talk about this, Tom, and that is I close some of my presentations this way, and I always say, when I retired at a young age, because I started young, I had a meeting with the devil and we sat down and had lunch, and everybody's eyes, they get wide open. They're like, "Oh, this ought to be interesting." And I said, "Do you all want to know how the conversation went?" They go, "Yes." I said, Here's what I told him. I said, "You have tried to affect and disrupt the people that I chose to serve and protect throughout my entire career, to include myself. Just because I retired doesn't mean I'm down and out. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to build and develop teams to wake up every single morning and beat you at your game every single day.
That's
So
awesome.
I'm not that."
That's awesome. That's awesome. Because I imagine it's got to get. I can understand where you'd be tired. First of all, you're doing a lot of these trainings, but you're taking that on. I mean, again, whether it's security, guest services, etc., you're taking that ownership almost, and it's a heavy lift. Um, so speak about that a little bit. I mean, it can be wearing. I'm sure you need time to recharge. Um, but also meaningful and purpose, right? I mean, in your life, you can look at that and look at the accomplishments, the meaning and purpose that that has provided you. Sometimes the heaviest lift gives us the most meaning and purpose, and maybe you can touch on that a little bit.
Can, Tom. That's a very good point. Is it heavy? Yes. Do I carry it with me? Yes. Does it make me give up? No. Because the reward at the end of the day is when I receive the feedback of how everything I poured into my training, everything I poured into the decision making, to building these teams. The reward was when they reach out to me and they say, "Everything that I learned from you, I was able to take back and actually apply it in my professional and my personal life. Or I survived some really bad situation as a result of your training." I get that all the time. That's my reward mechanism. It doesn't need to be a pat on the back, but if I know that what I trained you to do was very applicable and you were able to apply it, yeah, absolutely. It is a heavy lift that I take with me. There's people that, "Do you ever sleep?" Because um I don't stop thinking
Yeah.
of being creative and innovative in how I can help the industry even throughout the night. So, how do I decompress that? And how should we decompress that is critical. And I have a saying, that you have to keep your teams fully vested, fully engaged. Give them that time to compress. Give them that time to enjoy the things that they love. And for me, when I get on my Harley, Tom, and take that ride, I forget about everything, or it builds on the creative juices that helps me develop the clarity that I need to really advance the training that I'm pushing out to the industry.
Absolutely. That time to step away and personally recharge is it's critical. And again, I would think, especially in your realm where there's serious consequences to a lot of these things. Has there ever been an event or like training you did and then something happened at an event where you look at and you're like, there was a gap there, or not that it was your responsibility necessarily, but something you were personally tied to, and then something happened. Has that ever happened, or you've been blessed that
I have been blessed. Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, they have a major event there that attracts millions. And it's an outdoor festival. And on two separate occasions, they had reached out to me and said, "Your training helped us close the gap on a potential active shooter or a shooting situation." So I've heard a lot of positive things, not to say that I haven't trained in a facility or a venue where, if I would have done a deep dive into that, there are a lot of things that I could have done differently or even better to help close that gap. I will tell you that after over 700 local and national news briefs, from CNN to ABC, Fox, all of these news briefs, they'll post up here at my house. Um, I have interviewed uh, on many different events, and one that I can tell you is Astroworld, where we talk about what is it that was challenging at that particular event where lives were lost. and you can actually see the gaps, right? You can see the gaps, you can feel it, and you can speak to it. So there have been a lot that I have spoke to on local national news
Which one?
in
Which one
regards
was?
to
I'm sorry. Which one was that, Mark?
Astroworld. That was the one, that was the first largest event coming out of COVID for the youth. It was the demographics were youth. It was a high energy artist that is highly regarded, respected in Houston. They put on a show at an outdoor festival, outdoor event, over 10,000, no, over 50,000 people in an outdoor setting, and ultimately lives were lost as a result of a crowd crush.
I know.
There's
I
a lot
remember
of
that
things that
one.
happened
Yes.
leading up to that event, but that happened in Houston. So I've been able to see events and speak to what happened. The shooting, the recent shootings or attempted assassinations of our president, right? What could have been done differently? Where were the gaps there? I was able to speak to that just based on the intel and the information that was provided to me. I could actually see the gaps,
Yeah.
right? So I've been able to speak to a lot of the different gaps, but that helps me refine the training and emphasize on the things that I have seen that are challenging. When you talk about perimeter security, when you talk about points of elevation at major events, those are critical areas and those are areas of vulnerability. So when you train teams, you got to train them to identify where their vulnerabilities are at and give them the tools to mitigate those types of risks.
Yeah.
That's the key.
So you're always thinking, I mean, it's got to be, like I said, we're talking about the weight of the world. I mean, even when you're not responsible for those events necessarily, you're always thinking, you're doing that heavy lift behind the scenes that is so critical to our culture.
Preparation builds preparedness.
Absolutely.
Somebody asked me, they said, Tom, one day somebody says, hey, what about too much safety and security? It really makes people paranoid. I said, on the contrary, preparedness beats paranoia. If I give you the tools to mitigate risk, you're more prepared to handle anything. So you carry your day-to-day activities with a heightened level of confidence versus I don't give you the tools.
Absolutely. I mean, what you're doing is really protecting the very fabric of our culture. You know, the freedom of our culture to have these kind of large scale events and for people to move around with that freedom, but also knowing that there's the preparedness went into, there's protection going on, right? There's things that have been put in place to make these events, make these situations as secure as possible. So, what you're doing is, if you would ask me 25 years ago, this is not even a thought. But now, I mean, again, I don't think I'm underestimating or exaggerating when I say you're really protecting the fabric of our culture, and giving people the freedom to move about with confidence. And it's only because of the discipline and preparedness that you put into it and your team and people like you, obviously. So,
That's it, Tom. And you said something that I don't think I really answered, but I remembered and I'm coming back to it now. And that is people don't really recognize when they're attending events how much work went into it.
right.
If you were to take a single incident versus how much work went into protecting the masses, it is way offset. Like the training, the continuous training, the education, all of that versus one incident. If they could see that and they could see how much went into protecting, they would probably have a better appreciation of the event and that particular incident. Because I always tell teams, one day they said, you do such a great job training. Can you provide us with, can you assure us zero risk? I said, no. I said, close your doors. I said, even then there's risk. No one can guarantee zero risk, but what we can do is go in and add a multi-layered approach and layers to protect your organization, your facility, your people, the number one asset, your people. Let us give you those layers. Is there a guarantee that that's going to always be 100%? No, but it's just a layer of protection. There's no guarantee to zero risk.
Yeah, exactly. But never going to be zero risk. But what you do is certainly give a lot of comfort to people in these kind of events. Mark, it's just an amazing, like I said, it's you really check the boxes of what I was planning on doing with this book, right? I mean, I was introduced to Mark through a common mutual friend, and again, it is an absolute blessing to me because Mark hits some key points. He talked about it: service, sacrifice, and preparation, and the discipline that goes into this. Just you embody it, not just in your professional life, but in your personal life clearly. Um, Amazing speaker, well regarded around the world in security. Is there any other things you want us to know, Mark, that you would like to leave with us? Or
I'm glad you asked. First of all, Tom, talking to you briefly about all of this has really, it really gave me a level of motivation. Um, it's interesting. I always say, somebody asked me, they said, what makes you an expert in what you do? I said, I yet to find an expert, but I'm just very passionate and driven into helping teams and people protect themselves against the element that wants to disrupt their life on a daily basis. I said, if you ask me what's made me good at what I do, it's I've aligned myself with people that are better than me. Tom, like today, just talking to you, you've elevated me and you have no clue. You've motivated me at another level. So thank you for that. But I'll always say that life's greatest reward for me isn't what you earn, in my opinion. It's who you become when you prepare your heart and you serve others and be that servant leader.
absolutely,
And making those sacrifices for something that's greater than yourself, not
absolutely.
pushing agendas, making that sacrifice, because that's where true peace and true purpose, in my opinion, Tom, live.
100%, Mark. 100%. I mean, the final step of the journey is recognizing just what you said there. We're here on earth to sacrifice for others. And that doesn't always mean sacrifice your life, but it means give the best of yourself every day for the greater good and for others. That is our purpose. We're not here to be living selfishly. We're here to connect with great people like yourself. Um, who again, thank you for your kind words. You motivate me as well. I mean, it truly is a blessing because you do embody those very things, that service and sacrifice, which is the ultimate goal of why we're here. So, man, thank you so much, Mark. I look forward to connecting with you on a personal level too, because uh, you bring a lot to the table and just your positive, upbeat energy. I wish people can just see that this is the true Mark, that it's just a joy. Even emailing with you, your positive vibe comes through, and it's that always brings a smile to my face. So Mark, thank you so much.
Thank you, Tom. I'm honored and I'm always here for you as well. And anything that I can do for you, I'm a phone call away. And I told somebody one time in the industry, you can call me anytime. I'll answer. And they did. They called me at 3 o'clock just to see if in the morning, just to see if I would answer. I answered and they said, "God, you really answered." I said, I told you. They said, we didn't think you'd answer. We just tested it. And they sound like you've been awake. I said, I am. In my mind, I'm still finding ways to protect you at the end of the day.
That is awesome. I promise I won't call you at 3 a.m.
I'll answer.
That is awesome. Thank you so much, Mark. Let me just